Welcome back to Story Impact. I'm your host, Lisa Tolles. If this is your first time here, this series showcases authors, their books, their series, their craft, and their artistic vision. We explore aspects of their writing journey, how they started, who helps them stay on track. But we also discuss the purpose driving the creation of their books, what brings them back to the keyboard and that empty page day after day. I'm also a crime novelist, and you can find my books on Amazon and on lisatolles.com. All right, let's get started. I'm so excited to be interviewing my good friend Kat Connor. She's an inspiring, talented, multi-published crime thriller author from New Zealand. Her incredibly successful Bite series, published by Rebel e-publishers in the US, has 13 books tracing the complex and fascinating investigations of her protagonist, Ellie Conway. And that series is also available via Crazy Maple Studios on the Scream and Kiss apps. Today she'll be talking about her new series, and Kat is also a frequent speaker and a teacher. Her deep love of animals keeps her very connected to her Mastador Diesel. I had to look up what a Mastador is. It's actually a Mastiff, I think. Patrick the Tuxedo Cat. And she has a passion for tequila, coffee, music, and traveling. I'm sure more than that. And in her own words, she's a murderer of perfectly happy characters, which you'll see in her books. So, Kat, warmest welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's fabulous to be here talking to you because we haven't talked for a while.
I know, and we go back a long way, and we live on opposite sides of the world. So let's talk about where you live. Let's talk about New Zealand. So, for example, what is a long black, and could you make one for us?
It's a black coffee. It's seriously a black coffee. If you go to a cafe, it'll be a black coffee in a short cup, but not an espresso, with extra water on the side. But if you come to my place, it'll be a full mug of black coffee that is very strong and delicious. I mean, easy to make.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is dolly cake, and what exactly
Oh,
is in it? Is it dried fruit or is it bits
oh
of
no.
chocolate? I know that's a huge delicacy there.
Lolly cake is a staple of all children's birthday parties and a lot of adult birthday parties. It's crushed malt biscuits,
Mm.
condensed milk, so it's quite sweet, and it has usually an entire pack of these fondant type sweets that are chopped up and put in it. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. It's delicious. It never lasts long.
And fondant is, I think, a type of like frosting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not fondant, but it's like fondant.
Mm-hmm.
Quite
Mm-hmm.
hard to explain what they are if you've never seen them.
Well, I feel pretty sheltered that I don't have experience with New Zealand food, but I'm delighted to hear more about it. And now I want to talk about one part of your life that's not writing that I'm really interested in. What do you enjoy about teaching crime writing to high school students? And are there any ways that your students surprise you?
Well, I should have said before. Even though I teach through a high school, I'm actually teaching adults,
Okay.
which for me is far better because I don't have to censor myself, and which can be quite a problem sometimes when we're talking about various topics of crime novels. Um, I tend to say it like it is, so I don't sugarcoat anything for them. They know how hard it's going to be, one, to just sit down and finish a novel, and two, to take the next step. So, but in saying that, we always have a lot of fun. There's a lot of laughter, and the stories they come up with are absolutely fantastic. The enthusiasm of adults when they're learning something like this is, it just keeps you going. It keeps me coming back doing it again and again because I love looking at their faces as they realize that they can actually do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I enjoy it. I did like teaching kids, but yeah, I've got to be more careful what I say.
Yeah, so you're kind of in your element now. And
Yeah.
and I imagine with adults being as busy as like you and I are, for example, you probably reach a point in your life where at some point you're going to prioritize writing, and it must feel like such freedom for them to finally have time to like play in that sandbox, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we all know that everyone's writing a book, right? But hardly anyone finishes a book. It doesn't look like that when you look at Amazon and you think, oh my God. But the statistics of people who actually sit down and write the book to the end are a lot lower than the people who are writing a book. Just people just don't finish. And it's the motivation, I think. I do teach an entire session on how to motivate yourself to finish the book and to just sit down and get it done because it's hard. I mean, you know that it's hard.
I'm struggling with that literally at this moment at this moment right
Yeah.
now. I'm not struggling with the motivation, but getting myself to sit in the chair and do it. And I made myself do it last night and I wrote 500 words and great, but I need to keep doing that every day if I want to get to the end. And it's very hard. And then as you implied earlier, once you finish the book, that's just the beginning of kind of a new separate journey, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. It never ends, does it?
Yeah.
And the things we're learning, they never end. So
Well, speaking of journeys, let's talk about your Bite series. So, can you share where the idea first came from?
the idea, because originally I was writing one book. I was writing Kilobyte, and it wasn't called that. It was called I See You, I think, in the beginning when I
Hmm.
was first writing it.
Hmm.
Um, the idea behind it came from a death threat in the chat room. And it was a real death threat, and because people are stupid, especially behind a screen. So I thought, what's the worst case scenario? How bad could that get? And that's where the story grew from. And the name of the book came from a friend of mine in Virginia, because I was sending chapters to him and he was making notes and sending it back. And at one point, I was probably almost toward the end, and he said that it's a killer of a bite because the bites were getting big in the book. The file was growing and growing. And I went, oh,
Mm.
kilobyte. Oh, that's going to be the title.
Hmm.
So that was cool. So once I did that, I thought, if I write another one, I'll just play with bytes. So we hit terabyte, and they were always something relevant to computers or the internet, the world of
Tech, tech.
internet, yeah, and tech,
Yeah.
but not really tech books, although there is a lot of technology in them. That's not the focus. But it was really fun coming up with the names, I can tell you. Especially when we got further through trying
Well,
to come up with something.
yeah, I love the theme that connects them. But also having read several of them, and I like this about all series. I like the transformation, looking at Ellie in the first book and kind of the challenges that you put her through, and then looking at her toward the end. I mean, it's really such a life cycle in a way. So I wanted to ask you something about if you consciously decided to keep writing these books, or if you feel like Ellie decided that for you. And I guess what I'm getting at is kind of the sense of surrender when it comes to writing books. Do you feel like you're controlling the process, or do you sometimes feel like your characters are kind of pulling you?
Oh, definitely especially with the Bite series, it was Ellie all the way. I mean, she was the one who first walked in and said, "This is my story. This is what we're going to do." And I thought, oh, okay, I'm just along for the ride. I really am with her. I never knew when it was going to end, but I
Hmm.
did know how. And that was by the time I got to book 8, which is Psychobite, I think. I could see the end, but I didn't know how far away it was. And I didn't know what the context was. I just saw the end and I was like, oh, okay. So she'll let me see that far ahead, but
Hmm.
not the build up or how many books we had to go. So that was kind of fun. I'd finish one and she'd be go, "We're not done yet. We're not done. I need to tell you this." And I'm like, oh my God. Can I just move on from this? But no, definitely with her along for the ride.
I love it when that happens though, because that's such a deep connection with the character, you know?
Mm,
It's almost like it's kind of a collaboration, you know?
yeah. And at the end, when you're writing a character like that,
Hmm.
you grieve. When you finish the series, when they say that's it, we're done, there's this incredible grief process because you've said goodbye to
Mm.
someone who became such a close friend, who inhabited your brain for so
Hmm.
many years. It's quite
Mm.
an unusual thing to explain to someone who's not a writer. I
Well,
think,
well, yeah, and when you talk about surrender and your characters kind of pushing you around, as my husband says, I mean, it makes us sound a bit crazy, I think, but there really is, I mean, like such magic to the creative process, right?
yeah, if you let it be. I think the problem comes if you're trying to force it or you push back against it. Like, oh, I don't want to go that way. I don't want to write that scene. If
Mm-hmm.
they want you to write that scene, you need to write that scene. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It's your character's story. It's not
Hmm.
your story anymore. So that can be difficult. I think it's hard for some people to allow that to happen, to just let it be.
Mm-hmm.
You do. You have to trust the process. And when you're new, it's very hard to trust the process, isn't it?
Well, right. When you're new, you feel like everything you write has to be absolutely publishable and flawless. It's really hard for the human ego, I think, to allow us to just fill up the page with garbage. And in actuality, that's really good practice, you know?
And that's where you start. You have to. I mean, I always say to my students and to everyone, your first draft, I don't know how, it doesn't matter how many years you've been writing, your first draft is the garbage draft. You just basically spewing the story onto the page because what comes next is tweaking it and polishing it and putting it all together and adding bits and losing bits. And that's where the magic happens. But that first draft is just pulling teeth, that is just hard work. You've
Hmm.
just got to get it down. And
All
it
right.
takes a
Um, Tell me this, Ellie Conway or Veronica Tracy, who's the protagonist of your new series, which character is more like you?
oh, see, that's tricky. Ellie doesn't like honey. I don't like honey. Our birthdays are in December. That's about it. Veronica Veronica is because she's a Kiwi. I probably sound most like her. And I have had people say at book launches, I could hear Ronnie speaking when you spoke, just when I say certain things. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I mean, Ronnie is actually an amalgamation of a few people. And I am in there. My best friend is in there as well. And we just sort of mix it up. Same with the rest of the characters, like Nana, who
Mm-hmm.
I love. She's an amalgamation of my Nana, my mother, my best friend's mother, and Nana. And
Mm.
I just went, oh, I'm taking this and I'm taking that and I'm putting it together. And we have Nana, who is trouble. She's just trouble. But it's fun, you know?
Yeah.
Because when you're creating characters or when they first pop into your brain, you go, oh, okay, what's this person going to be like? And I never know. I don't know from the beginning of the book. I don't know, one, who the characters are going to be, two, how they're going to interact, and three, what it is they want. I'm
Mm.
just writing the story to see what happens next. So basically, I'm nosy. I just want to find out what happens next.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is
All
where it
right.
gets it.
Tell us about your latest book and this new series. Can you give us just kind of like a high level sort of synopsis of like the context and what happens?
Latest book. Lucky I've got notes because I've just finished writing one. So the latest one is the one I've published this year, I think. I don't know. It could be. Um, because it's set here, which is really, really fun for me. Foxtrot Mike Lima is a spy PI story, and the whole Veronica Tracy series is spy PI. So Veronica used to be in the espionage game, and now she's a private investigator. She has her own company with her two best friends, Jen and Steph, and they do quite well. It's based in Upper Hutt, so I know the area quite well. They do really well. It's a really well-known company. They're working quite happily. But Ronnie has not quite left her former employment behind and gets asked to take jobs by
Mm.
various overseas agencies and sometimes her own country. Um, and that is where the trouble happens usually because Nana, poor Ronnie and her Nana is mystery solving in her own right in her retirement home.
Mm.
She has a habit of stumbling on things or interfering in things and getting herself into hot water. But we do find out in Foxtrot Mike Lima that Nana is not as silly as they think. And she can hold her own in certain situations. So Ronnie's quite proud of the way she does that. But she did make it to the newspaper, which spins things for Ronnie because now she's trying to protect her grandmother
Mm.
during what is a very nasty situation that landed on New Zealand shores. They're infiltrating an arms deal. And the joy of it is it happens at various balls in the area. So I got to put things like masquerade balls and we haven't had those sort of things for a very, very long time.
Mhm.
So I've reinstated the ball scene. So
Mm.
there's masquerade balls and there's the Pride Ball, which is still around. And they're all fundraisers. So, like balls always were, they were for a
Yeah.
cause.
Mhm.
And Nana manages to get herself tickets to the balls where all these things are happening. And it's just what's chaos for poor Ronnie. But it's really fun. I really enjoy it. There's three main characters really in the series. There's Ronnie, there's Crockett, who was in the final Bite book. And he's come back
Mm.
because he got stuck in New Zealand after what happened. He got stuck in New Zealand, so he's still here. He's an Australian. He's working for ASIO, but he's here. And there's Ben Reynolds, who I really like Ben. He's great fun. He's really fun to write. He's an American. He's working on a TV series in New Zealand. He's an actor, but
Mm.
he's also with the CIA.
Mm.
So he's very, very good at gathering intelligence. So it's quite fun having the three of them with their different fields.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I just love it. And I've just realized writing this last one that I've just finished, I'm just going to show you my last
Yes,
one,
please
which
do.
comes out next year. This beautiful thing. Um,
Awesome. Indigo Romeo Lima. Okay.
yeah, that's next year's book. And I was reading it. I've just finished reading it actually, like a regular person, pretending it was real. And I've realized that with this book, I finally let Ronnie be Ronnie. I
Mm.
finally stopped the fear in my brain that she was just a Kiwi Ellie, and she's not. She's nowhere near. She's nothing like Ellie at all.
Mm.
She couldn't possibly be Ellie in New Zealand. New Zealand is a very different country. And I finally relaxed and just let her be her. And I'm quite pleased with how it's turned out. And I don't think I've ever said that about a book before it's been published. I'm
That's
really pleased with it.
that's awesome. That's that surrender again. Like
Yeah.
you like just not controlling it and kind of letting it be. Well,
Yes.
I think that's great inspiration for new and seasoned authors. So what tools do you use when you get stuck? Well, who's that? Is that Diesel?
Yep, this is Diesel. He just decided he wanted to be closer. Yeah. Silly boy.
Oh.
He's lovely. He's a big sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I forgot the question,
Uh,
Lisa.
I'm just curious, when you get stuck, what are some tools that you use that get you unstuck?
Right. Quite interesting. Depending on how you're stuck, I think. What I usually do is create white noise in my head, which sounds ridiculous, but I will wash my hair and then dry it, or I will wash the dishes, or I will go for a walk, I'll do anything that's not writing or and even vacuuming that allows my subconscious to get to kick into gear and work out what's going on.
Ah.
And yeah, it's another you've got to trust the process thing because
Hmm.
I know it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I know what's going to happen. I know how to unstick myself,
Mm-hmm.
but you overthink it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You get sort of a bit stressed over it and you're like, I don't know how this is going to work. But if you just shut it down and let your brain do it, it will.
And step away. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I also will pick up a pen and paper and just write whatever comes into my head.
Mm-hmm.
No judgment from me, which is quite hard. It's very hard to for any of us to write without any kind of judgment, but I will just start writing. And when I finished, I'll look at it and go, oh, okay, that makes sense. All right, I know where we are now. And then you can go back to it. But there's various ways. I mean, everyone gets stuck at some point.
I think those are great ideas, to kind of like put your brain on something else and to kind of let it relax, get you out of your venue and out of your writing space. And
Yep.
sometimes for me, I find that when I feel like I'm stuck, it just means that I'm not listening and I'm not trusting. I'm trying to control something that wants to do something else. So it's that, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's exactly, I think, what happens to most of us. You can't let go, you can't finish the story. So I
so
find doing that just helps.
mhm. So let's talk about your writing path and your journey. You've been writing for presumably a long time. Who's encouraged you? Who encouraged you in the beginning? Who encourages you now to kind of stay on the path?
Uh, I was thinking about this question this morning and I was laughing my head off because probably 30 years ago, I had this notebook and I was going to write a book. And it was pre-internet. I mean, there was no, sorry, probably might be longer than that. There was no internet. We had bulletin boards, if you remember bulletin boards.
Mhm.
Um, you had to go to the library to research. There was no other way around it.
Yep.
And I had this pen and I had this notebook and I was going to write a book because I got so damn sick of not finding something I wanted to read. So
Mhm.
I started writing this book and honestly, it was the biggest load of bollocks you've ever read in your life. But my best friend and my other best friend, the pair of them, the three of us would get together and we'd read it and we would laugh and laugh and laugh. And we still do. We still do. You might have noticed in the Bite series, one of them was dedicated to Sue, for whom there are always chickens. Now that came from 30 years ago, handwritten manuscript, where for some reason my handwriting, instead of writing two Labradors in the snow, it
Mhm.
looked like chickens. And she's like, why are there chickens? And then it just became a thing. And we have
Oh,
laughed and laughed about that
oh,
forever.
funny. Oh, that's
Yeah,
lovely.
it's still there. There's always chickens. And Chrissy has always had my back. She's been there when I wanted to quit. And I'll be bloody furious and I've had enough of this and this is nonsense and I can't do this anymore. This industry is just shit.
Hmm.
And she'd just quietly make me a coffee and I wouldn't quit because she's always been there. You know, she's like, you're the only person who can write this story.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's true. So I've been really lucky with my friends. And my mother was quite supportive, but in a different way. She kept pushing me to write sex scenes because sex sells. We don't do that. You don't want your mother pushing you to write sex scenes, really.
That's interesting, though. I mean, hmm.
Yeah, what do you do with that information? No, I
Uh-huh.
never did.
Uh-huh.
I was just like, no, mum, no. But like my kids are supportive.
Hmm.
They've always given me space to be able to write, which is
That's,
amazing, really.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, because you need it.
Um, I want to ask you about reading. What was your favorite book growing up, and why did it make such an impression on you? Was there one?
There were many, but the biggest one, I was probably about 12, was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
Mm,
And it made a huge impression on me. And funnily enough, it has made a huge impression on my youngest daughter.
mm,
And I was like, huh, isn't that odd? None, the other kids never really saw the joy in it, but Brie does. So we both loved it. And I'm not sure what it was. I think it was the characters that that made such a big impression,
mm-hmm,
and that she didn't shy away from death, because sometimes people die. And I think that really hit me as a kid reading that, because
mm,
it was like one of the first books I'd ever read where someone dies,
mm.
someone young, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay, you can do that in a book. You can write that, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I like crime. I don't know. And then it was The Three Musketeers.
Oh,
I I
classic.
love that.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
I know. I love it so much that I was intending to call my youngest two children D'Artagnan had they been boys.
I love that
I
name. I love that name.
know it's the best name in the world, right? The youngest is still like, you should have just called me D'Artagnan anyway. Could have, I suppose. But I loved The Three Musketeers. I loved Robin Hood and I loved Ivanhoe. So I
Mm,
guess there's a bit of a theme.
mm-hmm,
I like
mm-hmm.
I like the underdog thing,
Yeah.
the someone fighting for the underdog. Um, and I don't know, I just took all that and eventually went, right, I want to do this. I want to just sit down and do this, pen and paper.
And,
But
and I think you do that with your books. I mean, I feel like your books really kind of embrace the sense of adventure, and that's really what a thriller is. You think of a
it
mystery,
is.
but a thriller, really has like higher stakes, a faster pace, and it's really such a whirlwind, like what we
Yeah,
do to our characters. And yeah, so I think you're doing that.
yeah, thank you. But we're quite mean to our characters, really. We throw everything known to man at them and then some, and then at the very end, no one knows what's going to happen because we become untrustworthy, which I quite like. I
Absolutely.
like that. Yeah. I had a friend tell me, I think Exacerbate had just come out. She just finished reading it, and she said, I love your work, but I don't trust you. And I went, oh. I like that. I like that you cannot trust me. You
I know,
cannot
that's
sit down and
awesome.
go, this is going to be a happy ending because anything could happen.
Right. All
Yeah.
right. Let me ask two more questions. The
Okay.
first one is, what do you know now about the writing industry that you wish you knew 20 years ago?
What do I know now?
Is there one
Well,
thing that comes to mind?
probably how hard it is. And I think 20 years ago, I was already in the industry. I was shopping Kilobyte, I think. So I knew a lot because I belonged to Backspace. So I had a lot of background. I had people I could reach out to and go, help me with this letter and help me with that. Um, and I was watching other people query and things, and I knew it was tough. I knew it was hard out there. I don't know if I understood correctly how hard it is and how much depends on whether an agent has had a cup of coffee that morning when they see your query or, just random things,
Hmm.
because it really does. It's a lot of times it's not the subject, it's not the writing. A lot of times it's actually a personal thing.
That's right.
I, And I had an agent say she loved the book. She absolutely loved Colorblight, but she wouldn't rep me because I killed the mother. And that was for her. For her, she couldn't get past that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so potentially she'd just lost a mum or whatever. And I don't like, in the industry, I don't like how subjective it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's really hard to navigate, especially from the bottom of the world. Because back
Yeah.
in the day, you had to send manuscripts, like
Hmm.
send them.
Hmm.
It costs $80 to send a manuscript to the US,
That's right.
It was hard. And I think I think it did me in good stead, though. I learnt how to take a rejection. I learnt how to fight for what I wanted.
Interesting.
Yeah, because when
Hmm.
you first start out, you don't realize how tough it's going to be.
That's right. That's right. And I think learning, like you say, kind of what those rules and parameters are frees you because it makes you realize, if I can only do this within this box, I'm going to do this over here because it's more fun and that will like,
Yes.
kind of free my heart. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Okay.
What would you say is your purpose as a writer, and what do you hope to leave with your readers when they read your latest book?
My purpose is definitely to entertain. I mean, it's escapism. I want my readers to care about my characters. I want them to laugh. I want them to feel good. I want them to be slightly scared at times. But most of all, I just want them to be entertained and to enjoy the process. And so when they're reading, I really want them to connect with my characters.
Mm,
Like they could take them out somewhere because they're on that level with them. They're like, let's go to the pub. And my characters would be like, yep, we're there. You know, I like the idea that people connect with them quite strongly.
mhm.
But I think also we learn through fiction.
Oh, definitely.
We learn about relationships. We learn about various topics, and we learn faster through fiction than we do through nonfiction. So I hope that if I've got something in there and it teaches them something,
Hmm.
I hope they use it or they find a place for it, or they can one day go, oh, hang on, I know what that is because I read a book.
Well, that's a whole separate conversation, and I wish we had another like 30 minutes to discuss how you said that we learn more through fiction than through nonfiction. That's fascinating.
It
Um,
is.
All right, so hold up your latest book, the one that came out this year, and Foxtrot Mike Lima, and please visit katconnor.com to check out Kat's books and her upcoming releases. And Kat, I want to say thank you so much for joining today, and viewers, thank you for being here with us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.